Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum. I'm Zainab Isaji. On behalf of Octara, I would like to welcome you all in today's 60-minute webinar on Introduction to People Analytics by Nadeem Khan. Before giving you the brief intro about the speaker of the day, I just want to like to share the few guidelines of the session. In the chat, we welcome you all to introduce yourself. You may type your questions in the chat room, and Nadeem will answer them all in the end. The session is also being live streamed on our Octara Facebook page, which is Facebook/Team Octara, and the recording of the session will be uploaded on our Octara YouTube channel, and it will be also available on this event who has been liked or accepted by the on the LinkedIn, those participants. Right. Now, just allow me to introduce the speaker of the day, Nadeem Khan. Nadeem is the OD and change management specialist, leadership coach. He is an author of the book Introduction to People Analytics. He's a managing director of Optimize HR, data and people analytics solution provider. He is an active contributor of People Management and Entrepreneur magazine. This entrepreneur is Pakistan based but now moved to UK for his higher studies, and here he is here to share his learning with us. Nadeem, over to you.
Thank you everyone for joining us. I think there obviously a lot of people are connected on the internet at the same time, so there might be some sort of issue, a glitch. But if you can confirm to me once again, and then we can start things. Yeah, thank you. I would like to take you forward with thank you everyone for joining us. It's amazing for all of you to be here. So I'll take you through a brief run of today so that we're all on the same page. Why I'm here, what are the deliverables for today. So if you have any questions, we can then take that forward, right? Um, just give me a second. I'm sharing my screen so that you can see my presentation, and then we take it from there. Okay, so this is obviously the introduction to People Analytics. I won't be able to see you because there's a glitch between this. So basically, the introduction for the agenda for today is about understanding the importance of using data and analytics for decision making for the business, and identifying key business sources from within and outside the organization, the role of People Analytics, and how it improves organizational performance. So that's basically some of the key components that we'll be covering today, right? I would encourage you highly not to ask questions in between. If you have any questions, yes, please note them down. We'll be covering all these questions later on. I thought to start off with one of the most important thing and give a brief introduction about myself. So I've recently written this book that has come out in the pandemic, and we've got a lot of positive remarks from I think across the globe. So we've a lot of people have read the book, especially in the pandemic. So initially in the book, what we've talked about is where HR currently is, where we've talked about how HR can become a powerful people function, and how obviously it can transcend boundaries, where it's helping both marketing, finance, and operations in collecting all the people data and how to improve business value. So that's one of the things that is very important and unique about the book. But I think before I would like to give a brief background of how this came into being. So as I shared, as Zainab had mentioned early on, that I've traveled from Pakistan, obviously, and once I've traveled a lot, and I found that we're all talking about the VUCA world, which is very interesting. But when Dave and I started writing the book, we coined a term which is known as VUCAR, and the R basically stands for being responsive to this situation. And I think as human resource practitioners, or the people who are championing individuals, or the people or the workforce of the business, it's important for us to be responsive during this particular time when we are actually hit by a pandemic. We're not the way we used to see leadership has changed. The way that we used to see theories, the way we used to see organizational culture, everything has actually changed. And there is a real disruption that we need to check. And the reason why it's happened, because obviously one of the studies that I did in the UK I found out that and obviously this is a research by the CIPD. It says that 80% of business value comes through the intangibles. Now, what do I mean by these intangibles? By intangibles, I mean that all the factors that are all the elements that are attached to the people of a business, right? So these can be social factors, intellectual factors, how many people are connected to other people, the intellectual capability, the human capital, all of these elements that are intangible. So when we look at a balance sheet, for example, of a business, there is an element which is known as the goodwill of a company. So has anyone actually, as a human resource practitioner, gone in and questioned, uh, the finance, or questioned yourself, just for example, what does that actually mean? What is the goodwill of the company? How do you calculate the goodwill of the company? So that basically is all the elements, all the investments in the human capital. Previously, it used to be you could easily calculate everything on the balance sheet, where how many resources you have. That could be one of the factors, but now that is flipped, and that's basically come into all the human capital element, which is the intangibles. And that's the importance of why, the element of why we have the why we're looking into people analytics, right? The other issue that we see is, not everyone is analytics savvy, right? That's a global issue. And not going back lots of years, but a couple of years, let's say 5 years or so, Deloitte did a survey where Deloitte picked up these numbers where 71% companies think data analytics is an organizational priority, but one out of those 10 actually use data, right? Exactly the same way Harvard did a study and PwC did a study which had similar findings, where Harvard said 9% of businesses actually proactively use their data to inform workforce decisions. PwC, again, these are some of the top research companies across the globe, said that 3 out of 4 companies were held back by these issues, and one of them is the corporate culture and regulatory roadblocks. And what do I mean by regulatory roadblocks? Now, in the UK, especially in EU, and I'm not talking about the US, but in the UK, and European, there is a GDPR regulation of why you're collecting the data. So you can't just go up and say to people, we're collecting this data. And I don't mean, when I talk about data, I'm going to share what people analytics for me is. When I talk about data, I don't mean just the data being taken out from your HRMS systems. There are a huge amount of data reserves and data points that you can look at, which come from your marketing, from your operations, and these are all performance data that we can look at, right? So I'm not just talking about those data. And so essentially what has happened is the role of HR needs to change. And that's how we wrote the book around the competencies. And we found out that there needs to be an emergence of a people analytics leader, an individual who can combine the power of data and analytics with their own expertise. Obviously, these expertise include intuition and business knowledge, enabling a more effective use of organizations' most precious resources. As I've said, people's time and energy, and all those resources, all those competencies that basically bring the business closer towards achieving success and improving performance, right? Now, what is people analytics? I can give you a very. I've done different presentations. They're online on YouTube, and I've given the in-depth analysis of what people analytics basically is. But just to give you a very brief insight of what people analytics is, people analytics refers to the methods of analytics that can assist managers and executives to make decisions about their workforce. I have grown out of this definition. I have a particular definition of my own that I've mentioned in the book. And what I now believe is that it's a combination of both the internal data and external data. From, let's say, if your customers, your workforce is as good as your customers. So a very I would say an example is, if you go to two different banks, right? if you, let's say in Pakistan, if you go to Standard Chartered Bank, or if you go to, let's say, um, if you go to a government bank, for example, I'm not naming any bank at this point in time, but you can see the difference in the workforce, and you can see the difference in the customers. And the reason why that is because your customers determine your workforce, their capability, right? And there is, if, for example, if there is a culture misfit between the workforce, there is obviously, that is when your attrition increases. And that's not just me saying it's been proven. So I think it's important for HR to look outside the data, and that's what is happening with people analytics. So that's the new thing. Why has this happened? Firstly, because there are risks associated for not using data, and these risks have actually pushed HR out of the boardroom time and again. And this is not just me talking about this in 2020. People have talked about it since the past like, let's say, 5 to 10 years. And these are three of the decisions. Now, decisions made by gut. Now, let's say an HR practitioner is saying, because I feel this way, this is what the decision should be. And okay, so feelings are good, intuition is good, but if it's backed by pure data, it just makes sense. And especially when that's correlated with proper KPIs and performance matrices that can align that data with your financial output, that just becomes, I would say, uh, a very good decision to take without a hunch, I would say. Right? So you sometimes you're actually solving the wrong problems if you're not looking at the data. So you might be looking in the wrong direction. So that's the second thing. The third thing is measuring efficiency rather than effectiveness. And now, what I mean by that is, effectiveness actually brings change. This is obviously highlighted further in our book. But efficiency and effectiveness brings change, right? So that's that, sorry about that. So that is one of the things that we need to be looking at. Now, what are the types of data that we can collect? Right, I'm talking about lots of internal and external data, and this is just an overview of what I might be able to take you through a training program with, when we're looking at a training program with Octara. So there are a lot of things that we can look at, and these are just this is just a synopsis of what type of data we can look at, right? So from there are two types of data. There's internal structured data, there's external data, and structured and unstructured data. If we were able to capture all of that together, this is what it would look like, in a brief way, right? So we can look at some of these data points, and you can add on to these, obviously. We're looking at, and yes, one of the things, coming back to this, I would not encourage you to just start collecting data. That is not the way forward. I will let you know how to do that as well. But this presentation is the why part of it. So the roadblocks that you might be facing are institutional constraints, lack of analytical skills that require training for you to understand. And maybe even you don't need the analytical skills, you need a team of analysts or maybe data scientists under you that might be able to help you. So where do you start? Right? So these are the constraints. I think I would say people think that you need a lot of investments. You don't. There's a way to start, and how to start it. You start small, but you need to have individuals who know how to start it, who know how to actually take you through that journey of starting from operational reporting to strategic people analytics. So it's a journey that is taken through. There's also cultural constraints. So with cultural constraints, you might have lack of support from your C-suite, and leadership and employees do not value what you're doing, right? And why they don't see value is because you're unable to actually communicate to them why you're doing it. So there's always a communication barrier that is between the HR and the rest of the business, and that's a finding that we've seen. And HR does not know how to successfully relate analytics to business outcome. And this is obviously not just from my findings from my book, but these are findings from places that I've researched before. So the book has just come out recently, and the findings are actually the same. So what's the way forward? I think one of the way forward is using the right data, having the key matrices, initiating analytics. It's about starting on that journey. If you're going to be sitting there hand in hand waiting for other organizations to excel, you're I don't think that's the right way. Having a systems thinking, looking at the whole organization is very important, and having a data driven culture. Okay, so these are some of the skills required. Obviously, they've changed with the book we've given. I think there are nine skill sets that we've eight skill sets that we've given. One of them would be obviously you can have a look at these, but I would certainly say business is and financial competency is one of the one of the latest skills that I feel is relevant. So I thought to put in this case study here, which we did a long time ago with an organization, and this could be an OD intervention that you do, but looking at different data points. So it could be an initial survey. You start off with a survey. You look at qualitative or both quantitative data. If you have a bigger organization, you can look at surveys and quantitative data, and then design a tailor method and implement it. So these are some of the ways that I've worked with organizations. This is a real case study that I did back in, I think, 2 3 years ago. I thought to mention this here. Um, this is very important that building a visionary company requires 1% vision and 99% alignment. So yes, you do need vision, but you do need alignment, and culture obviously eats strategy. So it's all about creating that data driven culture. You need to get started for all those leaders. So the reason to probably this is the we're closer to the end of the presentation. Yeah, can someone there's always an important thing to understand. So there are two there are two parties here, right? There are individuals who are actually going to do the analysis for you. There are individuals in the C-suite. There are individuals who look at the data and make the decisions, right? I help people with looking at the data and making those decisions, right? So it's important for you to understand when you're in the training what I can give you, right? What I'm capable of giving you, or is the training right for you? So this is not a training for data scientists. I've studied strategic human resource. I've not just studied it, but the book that we had mentioned here has almost 24 case studies. This is the book Introduction to People Analytics. It's been published by Kogan Page, which obviously publishes manuals and work for the People Management magazine. They're collaborators with them in the UK and the CIPD. I've also qualified as the as a CIPD level 7. And at the moment, globally, there is no program that offers such, I'd say, insights. Whether we're looking at the CIPD or SHRM, they're unfortunately they're lagging. And I'm saying this live, because I know this is the case, right? So there is a huge demand for these skills, and these are all on the leadership skills. How do you look at data? How do you interpret that data? And I'm talking about people data. I'm talking about the performance and productivity data that organizations are able to collect if they're able to ask the right business questions. So we as HR people, we unfortunately are always asking problems that are relevant to HR alone, the function of HR. We need to think outside of HR. We need to think, okay, so what is the business problem that we're trying to solve? So that is what I help HR leaders transform into people strategists, and that's basically the difference. So I think my presentation ends here. If you have any questions, please start asking them. I would be happy to take this forward and not and not waste more of your time. Okay, if you have any questions, please start writing them. If there are any questions that people have collected in the start, you can share them with me, and then I would be happy to answer those questions. And I think by asking a question, you might be able to there might be things that I can help you with, maybe answer some of. I think Adil has said old management age, what you cannot measure, you cannot manage. I certainly believe this. Yes, people have asked, are you recording this? Yes, this is recorded. You can have a look at it. Okay, people, I think, are people facing, when people are saying they have connectivity issues, is it from their side or is it from our side? Okay, Adil has asked a question. Old management, obviously, what you cannot measure, you cannot manage. Okay, so yes, this is a great, this is probably not necessarily a question, but you've pointed out to something. What cannot be measured cannot be managed, and obviously, this is this is yes, this is partly true, and you need to be able to manage what you need to be able to measure what you want to manage. So yes, that is certainly true. And I think Peter Drucker said this: what cannot be measured cannot be managed. So I'd like to bring on, if there aren't any questions, I'd like to bring on JJ, and we can have a conversation, and then maybe. Okay, Adil said low trust culture doesn't encourage data sharing. That's the reality on the ground. Yes, true. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamualaikum, Nadeem. Thank you. Thank you for your 30 minutes insight into what HR analytics means to HR people, to
Thank you.
myself, who is not familiar so much with analytics as such. I'm very much familiar
Thank
with
you.
HR management, not so much with how this new skill or analytics that you call is going to help us out in the future. I think there's a major challenge that you posed by way of introducing this as a skill that is to be required both by the senior management as well as the HR people. And the reason why it's a challenge is because I think for the last maybe 100 years, if not 50, 60 years, it's embedded in our culture the way people have been managed, which was based on the old model of the Industrial Revolution, see,
Yes.
and where people were expected to come to the job at 9 o'clock and go at 5 o'clock, and everything was tailor made or customized around the 9 to 5, time. So all this HR management has got a very strong so far. What is happening is it's very strongly embedded with old ways of doing things. You see, and now that we have to go digital, I think the real challenge lies in HR people understanding how much the digital skill is required to
Yes.
be able to get the kind of data that is required for decision makers. So the decision maker is going to be expecting get a lot of information, a lot of data from the front line, and then they
Yes.
would be able to perhaps make a decision. So it's a real
Yes.
challenge.
Yes.
So how do you think that this is going to be? How long would it take? I mean, any organization if it starts today to go digital and to look at and analyzing people's behavior or their attitude, how they need to be managed. How much time do you think it would take?
I think the first thing we need to understand is organizations have data, right? Marketing has been collecting data for the past, let's say, 5 6 years, especially in Pakistan. I've worked in Pakistan. I know that systems have been in place where finance has been collecting data, marketing has been collecting data. What HR has missed is HR seems to think that we only need to collect the data from the people side or the HRMS systems. And a lot of organizations, yes, they have HRMS systems, they have their particular systems in place. Then what they need to do is they need to first the first part of how you get started. Obviously, some of the people have asked me, how do you get started? You need to set the right KPIs, right? You need to set the right KPIs. You need to have a business problem that we're trying to solve, right? If we're just looking at particular attrition rates or looking at some things that we like in HR, that might not be a business problem. And a lot of the time we start investing in things which are not necessarily fruitful for the business. So that's where, let's say, we put 20 people in a training program which we cannot show an ROI of. What people analytics does is enable you to show that return on invested investment, or return on people, or return on talent. So there are a lot of because there are separate ways of how SHRM is calculating ROI of people. CIPD has a way of calculating ROI of people. What people analytics can enable you to do is look at the ROI of that people uh, from invested training and how much that impact has had on a particular operations of your business. So it can go back. If we start today, obviously we'll have to see how that particular organization, where it is in terms of collecting that data, what their aspirations are, and obviously it has a lot to do with what phase they're on. So there are 4 stages. The first stage, which we've mentioned, is the first stage is where you're actually reporting that data, right? You're reporting it, but you're only reporting it in ad hoc ways. And the second stage of that is to be able to report to be able to report it systematically. So that's systematic reporting. And then analytics comes. That's obviously ad hoc analytics, where you start to analyze that data and give insights. It's like you taking a report to a doctor and asking them, okay, so if this is my health indicator, right, this is what I've reported. I give an example of, let's say, if I have a weighing machine. If I have a weighing machine, I step on the weighing machine, I know my weight is, let's say, 70 kg, an example, right? So tomorrow, and yesterday I've measured my weight, or maybe uh, a month ago it was 69, right? And I've started eating crap. An example, I've started eating ice cream, and this is a very simple example. I want to be as simple as possible to get inside HR. And if I've started eating bad things like ice cream, toffee, started drinking Pepsi, Coke, and stuff like that, I'm not saying it's bad or good, depending on yourself. And my weight has increased 72. So what's happening? My health is decreasing, right? And I have a basically I have a special weighing machine that also shows my BMI and also shows my blood pressure. That's an added advantage for me. So I know what my BMI is, what my blood count, what my let's say what my heart, what my pulse is, and if I have, let's say, so all these indicators will determine what my previous status was. That was my report for last month and for today. Now, if I keep eating those things, if I keep drinking and eating those things that I was doing, obviously my health will it decrease or will it increase, right? So that is what HR needs to do. It needs to look at what it was doing in the past, what intervention it has taken, and whether those interventions will be proper, or are they actually, obviously that has to be correlated. It's more technical. When you look at business, it has to be correlated with the financial output of the business, whether they're actually performing well or not. So if I'm an athlete, I would look at whether my performance is increasing or not. So this can be applied to a business, it can be applied to a team, it can be applied to an individual. And these are the analytics where you're looking at the numbers and you're gauging whether anything is improving. Whether, obviously, in the past we're going to be looking at what your performance was, what it is today, and whether if you're continuing on this continuum, whether it's going to nurture you or it's going to hamper you.
So, in an organization, if they want to bring about this transformation, which means moving away from the past way of doing things and getting data and using that data to what you're, very rightly, speaking about, who should be leading on this in an
So
organization?
I think what I believe is there needs to be a chief people officer. The chief people officer is looking at is actually the right hand of the CEO. So that person, although I would suggest highly that that person needs to be and has an HR background, but now we're receiving more. We're looking at more people become chief people officers that have a finance background, that have an operations background, that have a supply chain background, and they increase the skills of becoming a chief people leader because they understand the business. And that's what, from an HR, because I come from an HR background, I encourage people who are non-HR, who are HR, to look at the business and look at non-HR issues. Otherwise, what will happen is you will lose the opportunity to become a chief people officer. Which, by a chief people officer, I mean a CHRO that understands the business and obviously is looking at the intangible element of how. See, teams are now becoming digital. all the products and services. Obviously, Octara is a service-oriented company. The better your people are, the better your performance is, right? So how you managing that? How's that performance increasing? So it all depends upon the culture. We have a question around. We have some questions around culture. How do you formulate a data-driven culture? So I think this is a question from Mohammed Salim, and my kind of answer to this is it culture basically. So there is only, I think leadership only has one role, and that role is to create a culture, right? If you create a culture, whether it's data driven or whether it's performance culture, that is the only thing that leadership does. So your answer is leadership creates that culture, right? So it's not me or it's not you, it's about who is basically leading that. And below the CPO, we've mentioned again, more strategically in the book, more in an operation sense, there is a chief, there is a people analytics leader that understands where the data can be collected, that understands the business problem, is a cross-functional integrator to the business, and takes things forward from there. And obviously that people analytics leader has particular skill sets that we will be looking at. Obviously that training would cover those skill sets. Some of the skills obviously HR people have, some of them they don't have. So that's very important for HR to now gear into the future. Um, this book was, my research was done in 5 years, so to answer these questions, I can answer them in a line, but they do require a sort of a change in time for that to come by. And I think another question from there is business is all numbers. Okay, so I'm looking for a question. There are people have, so this is Malihashi. How do you see people analytics vary amongst the different industries? Are there certain limitations to it? It would help if you could quote a small example. So I think people analytics does vary from different industry to industry. It depends on which industry you're at, what your KPIs are, and obviously what the business problem is. So that highly depends on which industry you're at, what type of business problem you're trying to solve. That's for Maliha. Okay. Yes. Anything else?
Yes, Nadeem, would it require for the organization to revisit its purpose, to be able to make this transformation, whatever its vision or mission was? What kind of changes would the owners or the people who are running the organization would want to make into that vision and that mission that can bring about this transformation earlier, quicker?
I think it's important to create a culture of trust. Very important, because when data is shared, employees feel very much challenged with what is currently happening. So when data is shared, it's very important for the leadership to inform, to be very transparent. I think that's always been a challenge in Pakistan, when leadership does something and they don't tell the employees, because there's not service leadership. When you have service leadership, you actually are informing individuals why something is done, and you're doing it for the people, right? And that's what creates that culture of trust. So if there is no culture of trust, there is a problem with that leadership team, and that's why that's the core essence that I'm helping organizations with is to understand. You can't just hire a data scientist, and you can't just collect all the data and try and analyze that data and believe that your organization will improve. It requires a process, and that process, we've mapped out that process. We've worked with a lot of companies to help them improve that process. And now, because we're going agile, we're going digital, it's important to understand how you're going to be mapping your culture, what changes will that have, what type of technology you can use, how you can improve performance through your management team, how you can create that culture of trust, and what type of data are you collecting, what's the purpose of the data. So it's very important to have that purpose and that vision in place from the leadership team. So I think you're exactly right.
So would that mean that the HR has to become, or the organization has to become more transparent to everyone if
Yes,
it has
yes,
all this data?
yes,
So it
yes.
means I as an employee of an organization could know what the salary of the chief executive officer is, or my boss is,
Um,
which
here,
is very confidential in our
no,
culture.
no, here. See, I've actually um, looked at the FTSE data, right? I've looked at the FTSE data. I've looked at the now by FTSE data, I mean the top 100 companies, and they basically share all the data. So where we are here in the UK, I wouldn't say we're 100 years ahead of Pakistan. We're not 100 years ahead, but everything is transparent, right? So my company, if you Google my company, you can go in and you can see how much I made last year, right? So I can't say an example, I can't say anything far than that, but SMEs are also sharing their data. So it all comes back to transparency. Why you need to be transparent is because there is you're not hiding anything, right? So the CEO's salary, the chief people officer or the CHRO's salary, which I constantly talk about in a lot of my sessions, is the CHRO doesn't earn that well because the CEO's salary or the CFO's salary is way higher than the CHRO's salary. And how do I know that? Because it's published. If anyone was, I would say, intelligent enough to actually go online and look at the financial statements of, I'm not taking a company's name. There was a company's name on on my mind, but if any FTSE company you go and you can see the CEO's salary, it's not hidden. Everyone knows the CEO's salary. So why are we to actually say that I don't know my CEO salary, this and that? Everyone knows the salary. It's just we've created that culture. Obviously you can hide it. I'm not saying you should reveal everything, but salary is just a very small barometer or indicator. You have other things around performance, right? We're looking at how the salary impacts the performance. So there are people who get a lot of salary but but really don't probably do anything around performance. So that I think that's the important thing to understand. Is there a correlation between the salary and the performance of individuals? Right? That's what we need to be looking at. If we're unable to do that, there's no role of HR, I don't suppose.
Do you foresee an issue or a problem or a challenge coming about with the CPO that you call Chief People's Officer, or the HR manager, who is
Yes, yes.
actually belonging to, who's at least 40-45 years plus in age, has tons of experience, but belongs to the old way of doing things. And then you have a whole, new bunch of young kids, young people, whether you call them Z generation or millennials, they're coming in who are much more digitally, savvy. They are much more quicker to pick up how, these data analytics can be, technology can help get data much better,
Mm.
much quicker.
Yes,
So
yes.
there's going to be a great communication gap between the boss as well as the new employee. Do you think that there's going to be a challenge that way, and how does one resolve
I,
that? Because
yes,
the
yes.
manager is not going to be having perhaps the at this point in time of the age that he's at, or the
Hmm.
position that he's at, to going to be going to back to college to learn new skills, or be embarrassed in front of his employees, his juniors, and not knowing a lot of things that the young man knows because they're much more digitally inclined.
Yes, I think that's a very good question. That's a very good question. I believe that there's a good saying from one of my mentors. He said, "Where the numbers finish, the art to executive wisdom begins." Right? So I understand, although I may know a lot of things, I've worked with a lot of companies, but when there is a senior executive, even if they're saying something that doesn't resonate with me at that point in time, but I know that, let's say, if you've accumulated that amount of I would say wisdom, it comes with experience. So I have no doubt about that. What I was 10 years ago, or probably when I started off my career 13 years ago, I'm not the same Nadeem now, right? I've worked with different companies. Although yes, I had the aptitude to be where I am, but obviously I would not see myself the same way that I was before. And I think it's important for people to gauge the competencies, and that's what HR's now role would be, is to actually position people at the right person at the right place at the right time. And I think you're talking about strategic workforce planning, which is a very important element in people analytics. When you look at the competencies, when you look at the data for, okay, so this person has this particular degree, this person has this particular certificate, but also has this particular psychological personal traits, and then you basically align them to what they're fit for today, but what will motivate them for tomorrow as well. And obviously those people who have 45, who are above 45 years, they also need to be coachable, they also need to be flexible, in the sense that if they don't have that particular technology skills, what I would work with them is to do reverse mentoring, where individuals who have that skill would be able to basically bridge the gap through reverse mentoring. So it's two people working together in that department to be able to grow together, right? So we can't promote an individual who's just like done an MBA, even from Harvard, right? You can't expect that person to be leading a very big organization, because that person doesn't have that, I say, commercial expertise to be doing that. So how do you align that person? It's through, I think, a reverse mentoring or reverse coaching exercise, where that person works with the CEO. And if you want to encourage that person to come up to that leadership team, you'll be able to then in time promote them. So it's important to have that combination of those skills. And obviously one person cannot know everything. So that's why you create a people analytics team, rather than saying, that it's a one-man show. It's not a one-man show. What has happened with technology, unfortunately, is that HR has taken on a lot of technology and then burned out, because they're not going into strategy. They're not looking at the numbers. They're just overwhelmed by the technology that is in place. You're not supposed to report on the data. You're supposed to analyze that data. That's what's missing currently.
So, if I was a student of, in college or in a university studying HR, what specific skills would you recommend that I focus on to be able to catch up, with this new way of using data to, improve performance?
I think recently, no, I'm not promoting IBA, but I got several messages a couple of days ago. IBA started the data analytics course. I'm not encouraging people to enroll in it. I'm saying that data analytics, the skill itself, is not taught in education, right? So one of the key skills that we need to understand is how is economics, finance, and the language of the business, right? And that can only happen when you're part of the HR, but you're able to actually transcend those boundaries, work with the finance, do some projects that lead you towards understanding your business, your service, your sector, your customers. And I don't mean, when I say customers, I don't mean your workforce. I mean the end customers who your product is being sold to, right? That's just the difference. Because obviously I've studied finance. I'm a chartered accountancy dropout. So I understand the importance of business for a CEO, right? If you're only going to be talking about fluffy material, we are going to be doing this training, it will have this impact. If you can't show them the bottom line, they will not give you any resources. They will not give you any budgets to work on your training, right? So this is a very simple answer that I would encourage. And HR is, unfortunately, at the moment, not as I said, the CIPD is struggling with this, the SHRM is struggling with this. So education is far behind. It needs to be. That's why we have these. I think the importance of the demand of this training program is because of that. The skills that people are looking to actually actually gain, and with the pandemic, it's just accelerated.
So, can this be taught in a training program of 2 days or 3 days workshop?
Yes. I think it's a long process. I think it for me, if I were to be able to give a longitudinal, because I believe in OD interventions, if there was some sort of coaching or OD intervention attached to it, it would do wonders for people. So the people that I work with, it's longitudinal rather than a 2 day. But yes, the 2 day would give you a refresher on giving you, I think, a direction of where you need to be, and pointing you to that particular direction. But obviously, you have your prior knowledge that you come up with, so that's joint with that with the knowledge, and you're able to take those tools and proceed forward. So you can start by Excel. You can start analyzing data with Excel sheets, but the importance is not for you to analyze the data, it's for you to make decisions looking at the data. That's what people are unable to do. So that's where I help people. That it's not to analyze the data. That's probably the work of a statistician, or that's probably the work of a data scientist. That when the data comes to you, when the numbers come to you, what you do with the numbers, that's the important element that is missing in HR. That's what I'm looking at.
How do you use that information?
Yes.
Okay, just one last question before I pass you on to Zainab or Aisha. Um, you know, this thing has been around for some time now. The data
Yes.
analytics. Now, post COVID, or rather COVID, has it made a difference? What is the difference before this COVID came in, and now that it is there? Is what has changed in terms of the application of this new skill?
I think everything has changed, to be honest. It's a very good question. Everything has changed because, see, previously you could actually look at someone. I was talking to someone, and someone was saying, my management team is clocking in at 9 a.m., sitting in front of a screen, and clocks out at 5 p.m., right? Now my question to them is, how productive are they? Are they doing the task, right? Are they able to perform the activities? Do you have real KPIs that you can measure them, right? Previously you had people in offices. The you could have you could the coaching was very different. You could actually take coffee breaks, you could go out with people, you could sit with them, you could discuss issues that they have. Now you have to spend more time to understand the technology that you have to go through, and you might be able to you might be going on Zoom and WhatsApp and other places, let's say Teams, MS Teams, and you're trying to solve an issue which was not even present before. So now you have multiple issues on top of technology, and an issue of connectivity. I'm not talking about internet connectivity, I'm talking about the human connectivity, right? So even though we are miles apart, but how as a manager, as a leader, how are you able to influence, how are you able to create that culture, is going to be a challenge in the future. And now this is the normal. I don't have any second thoughts of this, that we when will we be able to travel to another country such as Singapore or Dubai or other places. Everything's going online. So this is the new normal. In organizations, uh, instead of shying away from this, they should be open and adaptable. And who are they going to reach out to? They're going to reach out to the HR. But if HR doesn't know what they have to do, they'll not be able to solve this problem. And if they're not able to solve the problem, they will be the first individuals that are relinquished. They will not be required by the business. If finance is able to solve this, if IT is able to solve this, then what is the role of HR? Why is HR even there, right? If they're there for socializing, unfortunately, if they're there to do events, well, those are not happening anymore, right? And I might be sounding harsh to a lot of people, but you need to grow as the HR fraternity, and that's my passion, right? And whatever you're passionate about, obviously I've written the book, I've invested that amount of I say invested, obviously I don't take it as a cost, but I've invested that amount of energy into the HR fraternity, and I want to see it grow. And the only way that we can grow is we create that community and grow together. And these are the steps that we really need to take. This is high time. The pandemic has actually, we've mentioned this, a systematic disruption in the book. It's just come really early. We weren't foreseeing it. It just happened. So those are some of the issues.
So that's good news for the young people who are into HR, because my experience shows that over the last 50 years, there are very few HR people who have risen to the level of a CEO,
Yes.
because of their own constraint in their mind that they can only go up to the chief people's officer position, the director position.
Yes.
They do not groom themselves to, or they have a kind of a limiting belief that they will be able to go to become the CEO.
Yes.
With the knowledge that you're talking about, if it is young people who are much more savvier, much more quicker, they have a good opportunity to bring this into the into the boardroom
Yes.
and talk about these things and have a chance at becoming the CEO. So that's
Yes.
good
Yes.
news for young people who are
Yes.
in this field in HR.
Yes. I was
Am I right?
talking. Yes. Yes. This is a very. I remember me being at a CIPD conference. I was talking to a professor from INSEAD. We're connected on LinkedIn, and that professor has recently written an article on for the HBR magazine, and he's HBR Harvard Business Review, and he's coined it how all the previous management theories have become obsolete now. Right. What is currently happening is all the previous management theories and philosophies have become obsolete. And I asked him a question, and the question was exactly the same that you asked me, because in 2016 I was really curious. Okay, so why don't I see people who are HR and who have become CEOs? Now that's a burning question for me, right? It's because you don't have the skills. If you don't have the skills, if you don't have the competencies, how do you expect to become CEO? Now those people who are interested, those people who are interested to, okay, so earning a lot would be one of the things, but those people who are interested to become intellectually savvy, understand the business, those are the people who become CEOs. It's not necessarily that they have a HR background, right? And I want to help people from the HR background become at least chief people officers, the real people officers who can help the CPOs and then earn a good salary, a decent salary at least. Because that's what if you're unable to justify the value that you bring in terms of performance to a business, you are not paid that much. The CEO can justify, the CFO, the COO can justify, but why can't HR justify?
Well,
And,
that's what I
and
said. It's a
yes.
self-limiting belief that they
Yes,
cannot go up to that level.
yes.
But I think I've spoken a lot. Yeah, maybe Zainab, is there any questions that are there? We don't have to be limited by time. We can continue
Yeah.
with all the questions that I have piled up, if any have piled up.
Yeah,
I
there are
think
questions from Moaz. He's asking about, is there any example or a case study of how people analytics help connect HR with people,
I
with
think I've
business?
I think I've given a lot. I think I've see these are things that I would like to cover in the workshop. We have 24 case studies, and as I said, we have we have a time constraint that I would like to probably share all of these different case studies in the workshop with Octara. That is what I would like to leave people with. And the reason I'll be very honest, there are a lot of free things happening. uh, if you want to gain, if you truly want to become a chief people officer, I would encourage you to actually attend this session. This is just before we end, this is Sarim's email address. You can contact Sarim, and I would definitely encourage that those people who are interested to learn more contact Sarim, and we'll be able to arrange a proper training program for you all, which will have um, which will actually have case studies. We will show you how, when you look at data, what type of change you can bring within the organization. I think that's the cause of this session, right? I would love to answer all the questions. I'd love to give all my time to everyone here. We've had a great discussion on why it is important. I think the how will come when you opt in. When you're opting in, a lot of the times, I can tell you a lot of things. You're not going to be able to implement them unless you opt into this. So I have my own personal reservations. I've written a book. I don't have to. I'm saying this to Jamil Saab. I'm very humble, but I'm saying this in front of, not to create a sort of a negative thing, but I believe personally that it's important now for all the free things that are happening. If you're opting into this, uh, you actually opt into bringing that change within your organization. That's what I feel needs to be here. So it will create a chance for me to work with Octara. It will create a chance for you to bring that change, and that's what this session is for. I
Okay,
think I,
then,
I
sorry.
think you would second me for that.
Yeah, certainly. Lovely. Would love to do that. And I think it's time to, sort of wrap it up. I would like to take the opportunity to thank all participants who have taken time out and grace this webinar. I would like to thank Nadeem especially for the various insights that and the interest that you generated, and into this subject of data analytics. It's a very difficult way to pronounce analytics. How do you say that?
Yes, analytics.
Okay. And I'd also like to thank my team at Octara, with specific to Zainab, Aisha, Sarim,
I'll bring them
and
all.
all
I'll
those who are
bring them all
behind
up
the
here.
scene.
We're all here.
That's Aisha over there. That's Zainab, who's been, in the forefront. There is Sarim over here with the beard. This is the team that's put this webinar together, with very little experience, both in terms of analytics and digital. They've been able to put this webinar together. Thank you for that, Nadeem. So uh, I think I'll ask Zainab to say a few words on the web mall, and then we'll, let everybody go
Uh,
for their lunch.
I just want to add one thing over here that the email address which is being displayed on the screen at Sarematik will be giving you the digital certificates to all the attendees. So I would request you all to just put your full name and email it to him so that it's easier for us to send the digital certificate to you all on via email.
This is a
And
certificate of attendance.
yeah, this is certificate of attendance. Uh,
Okay.
other than that, first of all, I would like to thank you all for your participation, and I hope most of the questions are answered. And you are saying you were like mentioning about that presentation was not visible, so I will ask Nadeem to share the presentation PDF file in our event also, and this recording will be there on the event page and also on the YouTube channel. Last but not the least, I would like to thank some of the participants which are from WebMall. WebMall is basically we have Octara has recently they have launched a new product. It's a WhatsApp group where we share free webinars from all the international, national, every kind of trainers who are like into this sharing knowledge in this pandemic situation. So I will sharing the link with you in the chat. You can just join in, and it's like we share all the details a day ahead, and then on the next day, so that people can easily view that which and pick and choose their own web mall which they want to attend. So I'm just sharing the link with you guys in the chat.
Thank you.
So can we
And
go?
All right.
yeah, thank you everyone
Thank
for
you so much.
participation. Thank you Nadeem, thank you my team, thank you JJ, Aisha, Sarim, everyone.